Welcome back to San Joaquin Audits. On this channel, we take a look at police interaction videos. Today, we're highlighting a deeply troubling case out of Phoenix, Arizona, where two police officers violently arrested a man under highly questionable circumstances. Tyron McAlpin, a black man who is both deaf and living with cerebral palsy, became the target of an excessive use of force, despite the fact that the officers were originally responding to a complaint about a completely different individual. The body camera footage from this incident shows McAlpin being punched multiple times and tased, even though he couldn't hear or understand the officer's commands. McAlpin's disability and communication barriers were completely ignored, and instead of assessing the situation properly, the officers immediately escalated to violence. To make matters worse, rather than the department taking accountability for their mistake, Tyron McAlpin now faces felony charges for resisting arrest and aggravated assault. This case highlights how the police failed to accommodate someone with obvious disabilities and how they used their corrupt tactics to absolve themselves of blame. As we dive deeper into this incident, we are only going to examine some of the video footage for YouTube's guideline purposes. This is one of the most disgusting cases I have covered on this channel, and it is no shock to me that it involves the Phoenix Police Department.
Hey buddy, stop where you're at. Have a seat.
So why did officers go after Tyrone? It's because a Circle K called about this guy. His name is Derek.
Hey, you guys just want this guy to trespass? Okay.
And when police arrive, they don't do any investigation to find out what this guy was doing in the store. Instead, they talk to the guy, and he claims that he was assaulted and points to somebody in the street that he claims did it.
While Derek was being removed, he pointed at Tyrone walking across the street and claimed Tyrone had assaulted him.
And you didn't confirm Derek's story with any of the witnesses inside?
No. Dude, why don't you wait here first?
Derek's story would end up being false, but in that moment, the officers decided to take Derek's word at face value, leave him, and go after Tyrone.
We already established that when you pulled into the parking lot and yelled at Tyrone, he didn't respond to you, correct?
Correct.
Did you check to see if he had headphones in?
I didn't notice.
Okay. Did you check to see if there was a reason why he couldn't hear you?
No.
Did you try to wave him down?
No.
During your initial interaction with Tyrone, you wrote that Tyrone raised his hands. Can you describe what that looked like?
Yeah, he raised them in a manner that appeared to me he was going to use them to punch me.
So he raised his hands like this?
No.
Can you demonstrate again, please?
Yeah, he raised them in a manner that appeared to be ready to strike me. So what that communicated to me is I was about to get assaulted, not that someone was giving up.
Despite being deaf and having cerebral palsy, McAlpin was given verbal commands that he couldn't hear or understand. Instead of attempting any meaningful communication, the officers resorted to excessive force so brutally disgusting that it's hard to show the full extent of. They never even made an attempt to identify themselves to McAlpin. This alone should be enough to clear his charges when you take into account that a man with disabilities is aggressively approached by two men. Anyone would immediately resort to self-defense. Just because these cops failed at doing their jobs correctly does not mean that they should be able to claim assault, taking this even a step further if we strip away titles and positions. If I told you that two men in Arizona assaulted a deaf person with cerebral palsy over a false story, everyone would call for those two men to face criminal charges. Just because they are cops does not mean that they should receive any special treatment in the eyes of the court. But this is Arizona that we are talking about after all. This case isn't happening in a vacuum. The Phoenix Police Department has been under scrutiny for years, facing multiple allegations of misconduct, excessive use of force, and civil rights violations. These concerns culminated in an investigation launched by the U.S. Department of Justice in August 2021, which sought to examine whether the department engaged in discriminatory practices, excessive force, and violations of the rights of individuals, particularly marginalized communities like racial minorities and people with disabilities. The DOJ's civil rights investigation into the PPD was spurred by numerous incidents of police brutality, racial profiling, and the department's failure to address these systemic issues. Specifically, the DOJ wanted to determine if the Phoenix Police Department had a pattern or practice of violating the constitutional rights of residents, especially in areas such as use of force, treatment of protesters, and discriminatory policing based on race, ethnicity, and disability. Phoenix police were also criticized for how they handled mental health crises, disproportionately impacting marginalized communities. In the context of Tyron McAlpin's case, this DOJ investigation is particularly relevant. McAlpin's violent arrest, where officers failed to accommodate his deafness and cerebral palsy, appears to directly align with the types of misconduct that the DOJ's investigation aims to address. The fact that McAlpin's disabilities were ignored and that the officers relied on excessive force without verifying the claims against him mirrors many of the issues the DOJ has been scrutinizing. McAlpin was charged with serious crimes like aggravated assault and resisting arrest. This reflects a systemic failure in how the police interact with disabled individuals, who are more likely to be subjected to excessive force when officers misinterpret their inability to comply with commands. This DOJ investigation continues to be critical in holding departments like Phoenix accountable for these troubling patterns of misconduct. And McAlpin's case is another example that underscores the need for federal oversight and reform within the PPD.
As I was going to pull in the park, I looked over and observed the defendant actively swing at Officer Harris, and then as I was putting my car in the park, and I jumped out and ran over there.
Sue's body camera fell off, but during the arrest, he testified that Tyrone bit his hand.
Can you hold up your hand high so we can see, show the judge exactly, point where it was that he bit you?
Right there.
Okay.
There's no body camera footage that shows the bite. And here's what happened when Tyrone's attorneys asked the officer to go through the video.
Anywhere in there?
Nope.
And stop at the moment when he says Tyrone bit him.
Right there.
The moment Officer Sue pinpointed is when the other officer's camera pans up and you can't see Tyrone. The defense asked Sue if it was possible that he cut or scraped his hand on Tyrone's mouth or the ground while choking him. But Officer Sue said no and denied using a chokehold.
Is that your arm there, directly around his throat?
The one on the bottom?
Yes.
That's my arm.
Okay. And that is around Tyrone's throat, correct?
Looks too hard to tell.
So how is this not a chokehold?
When I think of a chokehold, I think of two arms from the same person.
Officer Sue doesn't understand the definition of what a chokehold is, so I went into ChatGPT to clarify what a chokehold is because obviously ChatGPT has arms and hands. This is the answer it gave me. A chokehold is a physical restraint technique where pressure is applied to a person's neck in order to restrict airflow or blood flow. There are two primary types of chokeholds, the first being air chokehold. This restricts airflow by compressing the windpipe, trachea, making it difficult or impossible to breathe. The second is blood chokehold, carotid restraint. This restricts blood flow to the brain by compressing the carotid arteries on either side of the neck, which can cause unconsciousness within seconds. Chokeholds have been highly controversial, especially when used by law enforcement, as they can lead to serious injury or death. Many police departments have restricted or banned the use of chokeholds due to their potential dangers. I find it ironic that without even mentioning law enforcement at all in this question, I get this little side note at the end. As someone who actively participates in jiu-jitsu, I would classify what Officer Sue performed on Tyrone as a chokehold.
In a bizarre moment, the prosecution then got back up to prove Tyrone bit the officer, first showing pictures, then asking for a demonstration.
Would you open up your mouth and stick your wrist in your mouth?
Say again?
Could you open your mouth and stick your wrist in your mouth? And then pull it out to the side? Did you just cut your arm?
Objection, Your Honor. This is extremely speculative and really doesn't...
Overruled. I just watched him do it. That's not speculation. He's demonstrating.
Officer, did you just cut your arm when you did that?
I did not.
At this time, I do believe the state has presented sufficient evidence to establish.
In the end, the judge found there was probable cause for the criminal case to move forward against Tyrone. The judge didn't give an explanation, but the ruling means Tyrone still faces felony charges of aggravated assault and resisting arrest.
Mr. McAlpin, this will conclude today's hearing. I'll have you stepped over to my bailiff just to sign for those release conditions, but good luck to you moving forward in your case.
San Joaquin, San Joaquin. Yeah. Gotta watch 'em. We know the way that you coppin'. We don't give 'em no option. Camera gon' shoot in 9 minutes. Keep that rollin', no stopping. They don't know nothing, we gon' teach them everything. By my country, everything. This my country, every day. False conviction, you got a power addiction. We on the road, me and the bros. Telling the story so everyone know. Send them to hell, little Nicky. San Joaquin, shout out the group. We gon' show the world, don't miss it. My whole team on the mission. My eyes wide open. open, I see everything you doing. We gon' check the law. I know my rights like I passed the bar. I'ma make sure you know yours and all. Home of the brave, free us all. Can't do it all and we standing tall. Only real criminals behind bars. Only real criminals behind bars. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Officer. Why you wanna pull me over for? This is public property. You not even